We've never had a president of the United States stir up a violent attempt to block the transfer of power. I believe nearly 2 years later, this is still a time of reflection and reckoning.
Donald Trump purposely disseminated false allegations of fraud in order to aid his effort to overturn the 2020 election.
No man who would behave that way at that moment in time can ever serve in any position of authority in our nation again. He is unfit for any office.
Ours is not a system of justice where foot soldiers go to jail and the masterminds and ringleaders get a free pass.
Welcome to another episode of the Neoliberal Realm podcast. We have breaking news. Donald J. Trump was referred to the Department of Justice, the U.S. Department of Justice, for criminal charges for his role or his participation in the January 6th insurrection on the Capitol. The January 6th committee wrapped up its hearings yesterday, referring Donald J. Trump for criminal charges, but also referred 5 other Republicans to the Ethics Committee for disregarding their subpoena for them to appear before the committee. I have a question for you. Was the January 6th hearing on Trump a waste of time and taxpayers' dollars when the FBI and DOJ could have done what they did and bring criminal charges, which the committee could not? We have this poll on Twitter, Ronaldo McKenzie, Reddit, LinkedIn, and also on the Spotify platform. If you go on there, you can participate in on the community page. Again, was the January 6th hearing on Trump a waste of time and taxpayers' dollars when the FBI and DOJ could have done what they did and bring criminal charges, which the committee could not? You can participate in this poll by answering yes or no. Of course, visit us at www.theneoliberal.com and support us at anchor.fm/theneoliberal/support. Stay tuned for this exciting episode coming up next on the Neoliberal Realm podcast.
This was the committee's final act, if you will. They were meeting to issue these criminal referrals. They separated yesterday's meeting from the meeting, from another meeting that they had planned originally to include releasing the final report and voting on these criminal referrals. They separated them just to make a mark and underscore what they thought former President Trump really was responsible for on January 6th. And they did do that, by showing the public a compilation of their 18 months of work, including all of those witnesses they heard from, the thousands and thousands of pages of documents and evidence that they were presented, and the committee yesterday doing an effective job of showing that all in a short compilation and reminding the public just why they were voting and meeting to hold the former president in contempt. They issued 4 counts of criminal contempt, including obstruction and incitement of the insurrection. That, of course, will be up to the Department of Justice. to take on. But as they conclude this Hearin investigation, it was important for them to make their messaging mark and really do something that the committee members have been stewing over for a long period of time.
Donald Trump said in a statement, said yesterday, these folks don't get it. That's right after the January 6th committee had made their referral, referring Donald J. Trump for criminal charges. Donald Trump says in a statement on January 6th committee referral, these folks don't get it. That when they come after me, people who love freedom rally around me. It strengthens me. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Americans know that I pushed for 20,000 troops to prevent violence on January 6th, and that I went on television and told everyone to go home. And that's from a tweet from Mr. Donald J. Trump about on December 19, 2022 at 5:49 p.m.
Missing the committee's referrals, he said about his own actions on January 6th that he, quote, went on television and told everyone to go home, and he falsely claimed he, quote, pushed for 20,000 troops to prevent violence that day.
So Donald J. Trump yesterday was referred for criminal charges and 4 counts, of course, for inciting an insurrection, which was the main one. And we will review what those 4 counts are in a few minutes. But there are 2 persons. Yesterday, as the committee wrapped up their prison, the hearing, which lasted for 18 months. They ended by showing some powerful videos of testimonies that they gather from witnesses or from persons who are important to the case. Here we have Ms. Hicks, a former White House counsel to the president, and also a former senior advisor to the president, who gave testimony, to the fact as to Donald Trump's motivation of inciting an insurrection and why they feel he did what he did. Here are 2 testimonies that you may have missed.
He said something along the lines of, nobody will care about my legacy if I lose. So that won't matter. The only thing that matters is winning.
I just said that was just a terrible day. I'm working on a long statement. I said it's crazy.
What did he say?
No, these people are upset. They're very upset.
That was Carolyn Conway, former chief of staff or advisor to the president of the U.S. Now, just so you know, I actually got word from Mr. John Castro regarding this, and we'll have that for you. But I actually reached out to Mr. John Anthony Castro, and Mr. John Anthony Castro responded. He actually responded. Let me see if I could find the response. I reached out because I said in a tweet yesterday that I said, breaking news: January 6th committee hearings ended with a unanimous vote to refer Donald J. Trump for criminal charges regarding his participation in the insurrection to the DOJ, the Department of Justice in the U.S. Will this amount to anything? Now, I actually reached out to John Anthony Castro because, John Anthony Castro is a contributor to the podcast, and we have interviewed him, and he has actually staked his campaign against Donald Trump, and he is himself a 2024 presidential candidate. And I actually said not a tweet, it's not necessarily a tweet, and if I could find that for you, I said, will this amount to anything? And there are some more questions that we want to consider. Have you seen the latest from the January? They have referred the matter to the DOJ. Will this amount to anything? Did the committee achieve its goals? What legal bearings does it have? And will the United States Department of Justice pursue the findings and do their own due diligence or investigation? Can there be civil litigants or litigations based on this report, even without the DOJ taking the matter up? Now, Republicans were on this committee and voted against Trump, and we just heard Miss Cheney earlier speaking against Trump. Now, the fact that Republicans were on this committee and voted against Trump, what does this say about Trump's standings in the party? And what's the latest from John Castro? We'll have that coming up because he sent, as I said, sent us a short comment. We'll be right back after these messages and with more, looking at the January 6th committee hearings and the end and their referring Donald J. Trump for criminal charges to the Department of Justice. Welcome back to the episode. Now, we asked the question, as I said earlier, we're doing a poll asking a question as to whether or not this particular findings, whether or not it matters, whether or not all of this January 6th hearing matters, when there is no legal bearing. Whatever they did has no legal bearing. But does it matter? According to Axios, a news agency, in an article, it says, in an unprecedented move, the Congressional Committee voted unanimously that the former president committed crimes for his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. So it matters because it was an unprecedented move. A committee consisted of not only Democrats but Republicans. Now, what is important is this: the panel referred Trump, who has announced he's running for president in 2024, on charges of obstruction of an official proceeding, conspiracy to defraud the U.S., conspiracy to make a false statement, and incite, assist, or aid or comfort an insurrection. So the committee has developed significant evidence that President Trump intended to disrupt the peaceful transition of power under our Constitution. And that's according to Republican Jamie Raskin. Again, the committee has developed significant evidence that President Trump intended to disrupt the peaceful transition of power. Evidence that the DOJ now has, and that they will have to consider, and they also may have to do their own investigation again. The second thing is, as I said before, we have seen investigations. We've seen the impeachment and the impeachment committee on Trump and his efforts in the 2016 election. And they uncovered evidence that they turned over to DOJ. But what has come of it? Nothing. Now, we reached out to Mr. John Anthony Castro for comments. Mr. John Anthony Castro himself, a 2024 U.S. presidential candidate, who is running against Trump, who is a member of the Republican Party, and also have indicted or has filed a suit against Mr. Trump, saying that he is ineligible to run because of Mr. Trump's participation in the January 6th insurrection. However, there has been no charges. No charges have been brought against Mr. Trump. And however, a soft committee had been put together to quell the minds of people as it relates to Mr. Trump's involvement. But there's been nothing real, nothing substantial. And this hearing has no legal bearing. And the only thing we know is that the Department of Justice has information that it can act upon. So that's a step in the right direction. And Mr. Castro, alluded to that, and we'll have that coming up on the show today. But what is important, in my second book, Neoliberal Globalization Reconsidered, I say to people, and I say to you in the preface or in the beginning, I said, why are some people poor and others rich? Importantly, why are certain people poor and certain people rich? And why hasn't there been no real political response to improve the conditions of certain peoples in the world? The problem may seem complex, but complexity provides an interesting way to hide a strategy that places certain peoples and places in position of dependency while propping up or maintaining a status quo. But what revolutionary changes come to the formerly oppressed peoples of the world? Independence and civil rights. Nevertheless, through de jure or de facto factors and various ceremonial and selective exchanges, Black and brown peoples remain the poorest and most unstable and uncertain. Moreover, here it is. Here is the punch point here. Moreover, the recent January 6th insurrection on the U.S. Capitol suggested a deeply rooted backlash by a status quo who had been or had believed that its privilege was being threatened by the rising Black and brown majority. Hence the slogan, "Let's make America great again." Again, moreover, the recent January 6th insurrection in the U.S. Capitol suggested a deeply rooted backlash by a status quo who had believed that its privilege was being threatened and had used a strategy that would suggest this message. Hence, with violence, they attacked without apology. This behavior seems to support what Martin Oppenheimer had observed from Trotsky, that every class struggle is thus a political struggle, which in its objectives aims at the abolition of the existing order and at the establishment of a new system. And then concluded that when that new system has been established, if the class that has made a revolution and created a state in its own interest is too weak to dominate its state, another class may develop to usurp power and alter the state to meet its requirements. Oppenheimer, from page 13 to 14. And I continue by saying, so that the status quo today, who launched the January 6th attack, would justify its countervail as a plausible and justifiable action to protect its dominance. Thus, we must revisit and re-examine violence as an effective tool for change, or to maintain the status quo when we look at the progress of change and opposition to neoliberal globalization as the economic strategy that creates and maintains losers and winners of a certain pedigree. This is important here. This is very important. And I'm going to make this important point here. Very, very important point here as it relates to Donald Trump and the January 6th election. Donald Trump and the January 6th insurrectionists proved that it would be necessary for the left to mobilize on mass scale, reinvent the socialist project for our times in order to outflank such reactionary movements. Something that is probably outside of the present polls and the peoples who are vulnerable and subjugated. What is important and what is quite interesting is that we say that violence on top of violence creates more violence, which was evident when on January 6th a group of white extremists embarked on a mission to overthrow the US government, and referenced as a rationale for their insurrectionist tactics that they were using the same violent means Black Lives Matter movement activists were using during the US protests against the killing of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and other Black and brown peoples. But as we moved into the tectonic age, information and the control of it is becoming the avenue for which social movements can stake their greatest claim and launch their most lethal strategy to realize equality, justice, and equal opportunity for all. The decentralization of social media is the greatest victory for people in society. especially those that are marginalized and most vulnerable. But what had happened yesterday is a move in the right direction. But will it amount to anything? Donald Trump has faced odds and overcome all of them. It was just recently that they had impeachment hearings. They had impeachment hearings, but what happened? All they did was to turn over the report, a redacted report, to the FBI, the DOJ, which amounted to nothing. Donald Trump was still president, and he served this time. Over and over again, all we see is monies being thrown around to put committees together, which amounts to nothing. Some people can do their worst to society, and all we do is get taxpayers' money to put committees together that amounts to nothing. We'll be right back after this. This is the Native Borough Podcast. There are other Republicans who were referred to by the January 6th committee to the ethics committee. They were subpoenaed, but they did not show up for the hearing, and so they were referred to the ethics committee. These are Republican Kevin McCarthy, the current minority leader, who is presumed to be the next leader in the House. There's also Republican Andy Biggs of Arizona. There's also Republican Mo Brooks of Alabama. There is Jim Jordan and also Scott Perry. So there are 5 Republicans who were also referred by the committee, but not necessarily for criminal charges, but they were referred to the ethics committee for violating or ignoring their subpoena to appear before the committee to be questioned. So that's also coming out. Now we know that the recommendations do not carry any weight, any legal weight. That is, currently they are only recommendations, and you wonder why. Why is it that the FBI? This is a matter for the FBI. Why is it that the FBI could not carry out the investigation and then make their recommendation to the DOJ? But a committee that was paid, that wastes taxpayers' money, that does not carry any bearing, and that recommendations were made, of course, they are going to do this all over again. The DOJ through the FBI, whatever, it's going to do this all over again. But the matter before the January 6th is a very serious matter. It's a grave issue, which I believe goes beyond an event, a political hearing, a committee to discuss a criminal matter. But this is a step in the right direction. But what? Let's find out what the actual charges are.
Obstruction of an official proceeding, which is interesting. It's part of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act dating back to about 2002. And the statute actually is tampering with a witness. But the specific section that the Congress is recommending here, the January 6th committee, is actually a very broad, whoever corrupts otherwise some official proceeding. And it's a very effective statute because of that hazy language. The government has used it in connection with January 6th, and they use it a ton in other cases because it is very effective. It's a lot easier to get a conviction when you have that kind of loose, corruptly language.
And that is from a contributor from NBC News, explaining to us what the charges are and the way that they carry loose language, so on and so forth. By the way, we did get comments from John Anthony Castro. John Anthony Castro responded. I asked him what. I did send him a text, and he said this morning. He said in a response to me, I sent him a text. He said, "Have you seen the latest from the January 6th?" He says, "Absolutely, an early Christmas gift." But however, Mr. Castro says, "I don't think they'll indict Mr. Trump. The committee laid the groundwork for the civil case to disqualify Trump. Their findings can and will be integrated into the challenge to his candidacy." Now, as it relates to as you know, as I said before, Mr. Castro is filing a suit against Donald Trump, saying that he is ineligible to run again or to run as president because of his alleged participation in January 6th. And the January 6th committee is making that recommendation. Now, the judge claimed, according to Mr. Castro, based on, just to give you an update based on the filings, he said that the judge claimed that that Mr. Castro did not have standings and dismissed his filing. He says that, however, according to Mr. Castro, he's filed an appeal to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. So, Mr. Castro has filed an appeal to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. This is the Neoliberal Realm Podcast. Thank you for listening to another powerful episode of the Neoliberal Realm Podcast. We really appreciate you listening to the show, following the show, supporting the show throughout these months and weeks. And we are growing, and we have lots more in store for you with my new book coming up, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that. And we have many other powerful episodes and interviews for you. Just so you know, we were getting ready to do a show with Mr. Donald Ducky Burt, an entrepreneur, a business owner, former activist. He knows people like Martin Luther King Jr., worked with him alongside him in the Philadelphia, Camden, New Jersey area. But and he wrote the book, The Risk Taker. I had him on the show before. We are supposed to do an interview with him and also do some readings from his new book. And but I understand a couple days ago on Sunday that he is in the hospital, he's in the ICU, and we're praying for him. And we're hoping that we're hoping for a speedy recovery. And I wanted a chance to chronicle his life. An older gentleman, I think he's somewhere in his 80s. But these people, you have to chronicle them. You have to get them while you can. Sometimes we miss some of these individuals. And he has been a stalwart, an innovator, a risk taker, someone that we can learn from within our community. In our communities, persons who have started from humble beginnings, who have rose in Philadelphia, who have rose to the top in Philadelphia and Camden, New Jersey. A powerful gentleman, and I hope we get a chance to have him on the show here, and we'll carry that for you. But we still have some takes with him. If we don't get a chance to have him on the show live and so on, we have some takes, some interviews that we did with him, and we also have some readings from his book that we will share with you coming up. But thank you for listening, and you can subscribe to us on any stream that you listen to, so that you can get alerted when a new show is out. And you can support us 99 cents per month, $2.99, $4.99, whatever amount you can. And you can go to https://anchor.fm/theneoliberal/support, and you can provide your monthly donation or a one-time donation as we continue to provide this show free and easy to, and we want everybody to access this show. Everyone to access every one of these shows, because we believe that monopolies, because communication is to make popular. What was the monopoly? And that is what, and it is through communication. And life is about people and how people communicate. And so it is through communication that we can realize our goal, which is serving the world today to solve tomorrow's challenges. We are the Neoliberal Corporation, and you can visit us at www.theneoliberal.com. And we have several. We also provide paper writing services, website designs for you. We also provide ad services if you are interested, and other consultant services, academic services, research services. And please, I can't wait for you to join me next year. When I'm teaching the Caribbean Thought at the Jamaica Theological Seminary, we'll have some of that available for you. And I'm also working on developing a project, a proposal, developing an academic journal towards Caribbean Thought. And hopefully from that class we'll be able to have a project from that, and we are discussing, and hopefully we can discuss with Sage Journal, who has asked me to put together a project, an academic journal, and there's an idea I'm working. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. This is the Neoliberal Run Podcast. Happy holidays and walk good.